Hi gang, Scott Davenport here. Welcome to In Post. Thanks for joining me today. Today will be a live edit, live in air quotes. I'm not live streaming this. This is a start to finish edit of a photo I've never worked on. Just press record and everything, mistakes, backtracks, the thought process going through as I process an image. This is an image processed from the visit to Duckbrook Bridge. I shared that earlier in the week, and if you're a keen observer of that video, you'll see the photo I'm about to work on was in the video. You're like, well, how did you do that, Scott? You're doing a live edit. Well, that's why it's recorded, right? I did the live edit, recorded right now. What you're going to see is how I process that image. That's the image that showed up earlier in the week. The magic of scheduled posts on YouTube, I suppose. But let's get into it here. So I have this photo here. This was on the upper part of the Cascades leading to Duckbrook itself. And really what drew me in was this kind of triangular rock shape. So quick image assessment. I like to do that before I begin my editing. Overall, it kind of feels like the left side, like this whole section here, it's a little heavy. It's a little empty. It's kind of more dead space. So probably trimming some of this off and would take care of this little distraction down in the corner here. But just tighten in on this rock. I want to keep that landmass up there, keep the scene anchored. There was nothing going on in the sky that day. If you watched in the field, you know what I'm talking about. It was blown out, a really soft gray. And mainly want to make sure that this is crisp, it's got nice detail on it, and try to work this S-curve here. And so having this part accentuated. And the way to do that maybe will be kind of like darkening some of the rocks in these areas. I can see a vignette helping over here, maybe some burning on this area. We'll kind of see how it goes. I'm even already thinking of softening the leaves and so forth in the background. Glow, maybe not. But let's start off with the fundamentals here. I'm going to start straight away with the crop, and that overlay is just too busy. Let's change the overlay there. I'll just tug in from the lower left corner. And this will be, let's see, I'm a little sad I'm losing some of those cascades, but that's just how the scene was. It's how it's going to have to be. We'll tighten that up there, probably now at this point a little bit higher so I don't have that little distracting yellow leaf there. Let's see about, let's bias over that way. Let's try that. That already feels better. This is certainly my subject. That's where I want your eye to be grabbed attention-wise right away. And let's get into some processing. Wow, Adobe Color is the default. So you can tell I brought this into my library a couple of years ago because I usually start off with landscape as my default there. Let's try color again. Yeah, landscape is definitely better. It's a little warmer, especially on these rocks here. And anything else? I'll take a quick look at vivid. I'm going to stick with landscape. I like that. Okay, white balance. I want to make sure the water whitewash is nice and white. Ooh, that actually got really, really warm. Ooh, let me see. Let me undo that. It feels too warm. Let's try auto. Auto's better. 4850, making a mental note there. This went to 5150. And then as shot, was really cool. I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to take the auto. That's a nice balance between the two. So, all right. Let's see. Moving on. Try the auto button. That brightened things up a bit. Let's see. Before and after. That may be okay. And the reason I'm thinking that is I already see it brought shadows up quite a bit. And I'm going to reset that. I'm going to bring that back down. And I'm thinking about these rock faces here. I'm going to put that kind of on hold for a minute. I'm already thinking about that darkening I was talking about, accentuating that S-curve. But let's get through some more of the basics here first. Just looking overall, tone, color. I still feel like this is a little bit warm now. Maybe that. All right, texture. Definitely want some texture in there. Maybe that was too much. A little touch of clarity. And I'm mainly watching this rock as I'm doing that. I don't want to push it so far that I get too much going on up there. What about saturation? I'm going to push it really far for a second. I kind of like it in the background, but not so much in the foreground. So we can do something with saturation and a graduated filter. I'm already starting to think too about punching up this rock even just a little bit more. That might be a job for dynamic contrast in on one. Let's see where we get. Let's see how we go here. Okay, what else do we need to do? Let's take a look at HSL. Let's take the hue of yellow and push it a little toward green. That's going to boost the greens up in the background there. It actually does a nice job on this moss here too. And before and after, nice little accent there. Certainly some nice accenting up in there. Let's do that one more time a little more slowly. Before and then after. Good. Okay, getting there. Let's see. There's nothing to do with blues in this scene. There is no blue going on whatsoever. All right. I'm going to add the vignette now. It's a little early in the process, quite honestly. But the reason for that will be just to start to get an idea of what it's going to do over here. Okay, and let's take the feather all the way down so I can see where that shape is. I want to make it a little more rounded and push that midpoint out. So the midpoint will start to bleed, I'll say forward and backward, inward and outward as we raise that feather up. You see that? Okay, and then we can readjust that amount. So that's already drawing it in nicely. That's probably still too dark at those corners. Pull that midpoint in a little bit more. And before and after on that. Before and after. That's pretty good. I think, let me make sure I do have highlight priority. I want to protect the highlights. How about the highlight slider here? So I want to watch this lower corner here as I push that up. These little highlights here are brightening up ever so slightly. That's not so slight. Before, after, you see that little punch up there? That's a nice thing, because when you add the vignette, especially for this scene, I don't want to lose the brightness on this whitewash here. It's kind of connected with my subject, and it also it downplays the feel that there is a vignette there. I like the vignette to be there. I toggle it off and on. You can see the difference, but otherwise, when you kind of just get used to it and you look at the photo for a second or two, it naturally, seamlessly blends away. And for me, that's a good vignette. All right, I want to tackle these two areas here. I'm kind of drawing a big ellipse around this area and another one around this area, which may give you the idea I'm going to use the elliptical shaped mask. Why did that not work there? Let's see, what just happened there? Let's go ahead and just reset whatever just happened. New. Oh, that's why I didn't see the pin. Somehow I must have turned that off in a previous editing session. I do want to start with burn. And let's click once. We'll drag a shape on there. Let's rotate it around just to start to cover this area of rock. Okay, it's inverted, so that means the darkness, if I push that really far down, you can see where it's affecting, right? It's affecting inside this ellipse. Okay, back to somewhere around there. Let's take a look at our luminosity mask. View that, and let's make that a little bit larger, a little more generous inside so that feather is still covering areas. And I don't want to hit the highlights. I want to take the highlights back. And let's turn off that luminance mask now and see a before and after on that. Before and after. Okay, maybe too dark. Maybe around there. Let's take a look at that range again. Perhaps pull that down a little farther. Give a little more breathing room to the highlights. Not darkening it too much. Before and after. And the goal of this is why I'm doing that is twofold. It's darkening here, it's kind of bringing it in line with the foreground element, but also it's starting to accentuate this S-curve. Let's duplicate that. I'll stick the other one over here, rotate that around, while I'm doing this, if you're on one user or a Luminar user, they don't have a duplicate for at least the pins within, you can't just take one circular mask and duplicate it. On one, you could duplicate a local adjustment and keep all the settings, which is handy. It's a nice jump start. For that one, I think we'll take the highlights down even further, so we're only affecting a smaller amount and maybe less on the burn, because there's some of that vignette action already happening up in here. All right, third idea. Let's do a new radial, and this one will make kind of big, going through the center of the frame. I'm going to focus now on the white caps. So this will be almost the opposite, right? We're gonna burn the rocks. We're gonna dodge the white caps. So we'll switch this over to a dodge. Once again, I will leverage luminosity masks and just work visually. So turn that on. Let's make that big and bright, and we're gonna take away a lot. So we're just gonna start seeing white caps. Take the smoothness down some. I need to see our scene there. Not bad. Maybe nudge that a little bit more. So we're really just getting the upper end of those highlights. Turn that off. Let's see a before and after. This is going to affect everything. So before, after. We can start to see what's going on here, right? This is with all the changes, no changes. All the changes. Just a little bit of darkening here and here. A little bit of brightness here. Take that same brightness, duplicate it, pop it over here for these white caps. And I don't think I need to make any adjustments on the settings for the luminosity mask. They're just the shape, so I don't arbitrarily brighten part of that rock. Let's see, great. And let's duplicate it one more time. Take that over here, just spin it around that way. And this one probably doesn't need as much brightness because that's already a very bright area, so maybe half of that. Okay, now all those radial filters together. We got a couple for the rocks that are darkening things. We have 3 of them that are brightening the whitewash there, before and after. That's getting good. That's getting good. Next, need to accentuate this rock more. I'm going to try this with one more radial and a texture filter, but if that doesn't give me the punch I'm looking for, I'm going to bring it over into on one for dynamic contrast. Actually, you know what? Let's try one other experiment. Well, no, Scott, stick with your first plan. Let's not jump around too much here. Okay, let's start with texture. That's a big, healthy amount of texture there. The radial will drag a shape here. Put that like this. Rotate it around, and now I'll just toggle just the texture off and on. Before, after. It's not enough, and actually it's getting kind of almost grainy in the rock there with that texture. That's accentuating almost the. There's a lot of detail on that rock, granted, but it's kind of grainy. I'm gonna guess clarity be even worse. Yeah, ooh. What about just clarity? That's not working for me. All right, forget that one. Okay, so another mental note. I'm going to go into on one for that piece of it. But what about the top? Can we add in a little more of like a softer glow? Or we mentioned saturation. That was the thing we did before. Actually, this is going to be better for a radial again. I'm loving the radial filters for this one. Okay, so this will get a little interesting. So really big radial. Position that, and what I'm aiming to do is have kind of this arc across the top and the foliage above it. Just as close as I can get that. Right around there looks pretty good. And let's choose saturation. I'll push this really far. So this is going to be, insanely saturated. Right now it's happening inside the radial because of the invert. If I press the O key, we look at the mask. This is the area that's getting this enormous amount of saturation. We'll turn invert the other way. And now I'm getting this nice arc across the top. Let's stretch this really far as we can go. I have to probably push the center of the pin way over so I can stretch this way that way. And then I can have that fade off the screen. If I take the feather down, there we go. Now we're getting that, oh no, I selected a different pin. There we go. Now we can get this part here. That's where I want the saturation. For the rest of this, I'll use a brush, the erase brush. Do not need the auto mask. Full flow, don't need a big feather, just need a big brush. I do not want any saturation here, so we'll just take it all away. Okay, there we go. Okay, and now we can see this saturation slider is only affecting that little top bit. Now let's get it back into something that's not thermonuclear. Maybe around there. Maybe add a little bit of warmth. Push it up. You can see that. Just giving a hint. Maybe there is something a little bit sunshiny up in that sky, but not really. Let's see all of those radials together, before and after. It's taking shape. Okay. Let's see. All right, where I went in my headspace there, I'm still going to go into on one. That made my next step to take care of this dynamic contrast. Also thought about the notion of a double vignette, because the top part of the photo here, this stuff up here, let's get rid of all those things. The top part up here is still feeling a little bit bright, and I do want to make sure the eye is drawn here. Well, On1's got some nice vignetting tools as well. I can center things. I'll try both of those things there. So let's get this over into Photo Raw. So I'll do an edit in. I'll send it over to Effects, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, so in Photo Raw, I want to get some dynamic contrast on this rock here. And that is already so much better before and after. Really like that. Only want it on the rock, though. Only want it in the foreground. So let's get our masking tools. We'll use shape of edges so I can mask things away from the edges. So I press the O key, you can see what that mask looks like. Let's switch the overlay so we can see through. And just shape this down here. Oops, rotate that a little bit. That's good. Can give it a little bit of a softer feather. And like the other one we did in Lightroom, whoops, let me shift that to Paint In. We'll go ahead and let the contrast be in the foreground here. That part's fine. Don't mind that at all. So it just kind of arcs over, maybe around like that. That should be good enough. Let's take a look at before and after for that. Much better. Okay, very nice. I really love how dynamic contrast works. Contrast for my landscapes for sure. Just can't get enough of it. All right, very cool. I mentioned that double vignette. Let's try this. Vignette. Let's do something strong. Again, feather all the way down so we can see what's going on. We can recenter it, and let's take it down here. Let's actually take it down really low. And because this is the part that I want to have diffused. Feather that back out, and then bring that brightness up some. That's that's a little bit too dark. But now before and after on that. Before and after. Maybe a little bit less dark. That's getting kind of moody there. All right. Let's try the priority and keep the highlights. Nah, priority's not looking good. Normal, subtle. Soft versus subtle. What do we got there? Subtle? These are actually settings I don't play with all that often. I do like soft. I like soft better because of what it's doing at the very top of the frame. It's keeping that foliage on the darker side, and it's keeping those in, I would say, like the upper mid-tones, and really bring that focus in here. Let's see before and after on just the on-one changes. Before and after. Oh, just much nicer. Really like that. Yeah. I think that's going to do it. I don't think there's anything else I need to do to the image. I'll hit done, send this back over to Lightroom, and call it good. All right, so let's do a quick recap of the changes that were done. So started off with this image here, a light crop, just to take care of some empty dead space on the left edge. Did some processing in Lightroom, warmed up the image quite a bit, spent a considerable amount of time doing that darkening on these rocks here and brightening on the white caps. Then brought it into On1 to accentuate the foreground, do a double vignette. The first vignette was in Lightroom, the second vignette was in On1 to really draw the eye to that foreground triangular rock. So a couple of takeaways for me is the power of those radial filters, just using a bunch of them and isolating individual elements. And double vignettes have their place. This worked out in one of those cases to be so. I could have done those two vignettes in the same tool. It just so happened they were in different tools. That part of it doesn't matter as much. It was really useful. The whole point being draw the eye to where you want your viewer to look. Hope you had fun watching this video. You picked up a couple of things you might be able to use in your post-processing. Got questions? Drop them below. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.